Hello everyone, my name is Rebecca and welcome back to... Okay, I gotta take this thing off, it doesn't feel right. As you can tell from the slight change in location, today we're taking it a little bit easier. I was going for a fireside chat kind of vibe, but despite the fact that I'm drinking tea, it's super hot right now, so maybe starting a fire isn't the best idea. But all the same, I'm going for a cozy, warm environment because rather than the usual analysis, today we're having a little chat about the origins of TJLC. So you'll remember in my first video that I mentioned TJLC was an acronym created by three people: Grace Books, Fox Jollibee, and Mia Martin Freeman. Two of them, Grace and Fox, very kindly agreed to be in this video with me and explain kind of how TJLC got started from their perspective. The reason I'm including this video in my series and why I'm doing it now is that I think if you came to the fandom after 2014 and just were able to marathon it without anticipating the sign of 3, it's really impossible to understand just how much changed when it aired. And this seemed like a pretty good place to preserve this origin story. So I'm gonna let them talk first, and then when we get back, I'll explain kind of my journey. The sign of 3 changed everything. I hope you enjoy this explanation. Please take it away, Fox and Grace.
Hi, TJLC Explained. I'm Fox, also known as Fitch Cassidy, Jollibee, or I actually am one of the mods on TJLC. And I've been asked here for Rebecca today to talk about the origins of the Johnlock conspiracy, because I actually have been in fandom for rather a long time, which is kind of remarkable and unbelievable to me. I was still in high school when the first series came out, and now I am a college graduate, so Moffat's taking his fucking time, and a lot has changed, as you can probably imagine, because TJLC was not in fandom in its early incarnation, and it was really, like, it was a different fucking place. I love to swear.
Alrighty, hello everyone! It's your girl, Gracie Books, and I am here to talk to you about the birth of TJLC. So, this story goes back, I guess, to 2012, when I first really became aware of Sherlock and the Sherlock fandom, and I think it was very prophetic, because the way that I found out about it essentially was just my dash suddenly exploded with everyone having like absolutely harrowing emotional breakdowns over the Reichenbach fall. Like, no! So of course, like any sane person, I was like, obviously I am never watching that. I was watching it within weeks. And then I was, of course, destroyed like everyone else. At that point, I wasn't really in the Sherlock fandom. I just sort of, reblogged the Sherlock that was already coming up on my dash, just kind of stayed out of things. There really wasn't a lot there in the fandom that was speaking to me, right? Like, at that point, nobody really believed that Johnlock could ever happen canonically. That was, like, way beyond the pale. And, of course, that was, what I thought then, too.
So I just thought I'd talk about a meta that I wrote in 2012 that got people fucking riled. They got people pretty riled, which is hysterical now. It was titled, "I Am Disappointed in Everybody," or "No, my expectations were never that high." And the first line's pretty good. To start, I never thought John and Sherlock would become canon. No, really. I don't think many people do. Lots of people want it to, but I think it's generally accepted as a relative impossibility, no matter how much we want it. What I'm here to talk about is why the impossibility is so harmful, what that says about media today, and of course, why I'm disappointed in fucking everybody. And I go on to talk at length about this tweet that Ian Hallard made about how he thought that it was okay that some people like to fantasize about Sherlock and John, but it would never happen on the show, and how ridiculous is that? So at the time, fandom was like post-Reichenbach, and everyone was just like really sad all the time because Sherlock was dead. I personally was very sad. I wrote a prolific amount of just like really sad fanfiction that I don't think anyone should read. And it was happening at the time that like Amanda Abington had just been cast as Mary, and we were finding out about the wedding, and it was like, oh my god, and things like kind of sucked us. It was like basically the general atmosphere in fandom was that like John and Sherlock were meant to be together, and they were so in love, and wasn't it so nice that we had this beautiful like ship that we loved, and they were like perfect, but of course, it was never going to happen, and we were just gay shippers, and we were going to have to deal with the fact that, like, we were creepy and weird, and, like, we wouldn't, like, what we liked is not something valid in terms of, like, television interpretation or, like, something that could possibly happen on TV.
You know, it was just, what I was experiencing even then was just this sort of sense of frustration. And, you know, I guess I probably would have described it at that time as, like, a sense of frustration at the opportunity kind of that they were missing out on to tell an amazing, incredible romance story. But now looking back, I think even more specifically, it was like a frustration that actually was the story they were telling, but you couldn't believe it. There was just no possible way you could believe that was true. So it was like that frustration, that conflict between those two parts of your mind and you know, how they were perceiving the story. By the way, don't mess with me. Just kidding. I ran head on into another cyclist on my bike.
Basically, Ian Hallard got upset that I yelled at him, and, which, like, fair. And we had a talk and a chat, and he was, like, very kind to me and, like, said that I was very intelligent, but of course continued to disavow the idea of Johnlock being true, which is the whole idea behind the conspiracy. So I guess that brings us to when the Sign of Three finally came out, which is the episode that had been making everybody kind of freak out, like, oh my god, John's having, like, just, like, he's getting straight married, really. It's just, why would he? And I, like, being an angst queen going into it. And I remember, and, like, we were still in fandom, we were still just thinking, okay, like, they're never going to be together, so let's just enjoy it. And I got mad about it, but now it's just like, okay, they're never going to be together. I hope I get enough, like, sad Sherlock fodder for myself.
At this point, both Fox and myself had also become very close with the lovely Mia Martin Freeman, who, just, like, really, Mia is, like, the paradigm of the person that, like, you just so deeply, intensely want this to happen for, right? It's just, like, Mia is, like, the exact person. She's so sweet, she's so amazing, she's so genuine, and just such a lovely person that, you know, a young lesbian person that you're just like, this is the person that this has to be happening for. It has to. So anyway, Fox and myself had also become close with Mia going into series 3, and next thing we know, the infamous series 3 aired. And so at this point, Fox, myself, and Mia, but especially Mia and Fox, were just seriously on Skype talking to each other 24/7, just obsessive, just talking about it. The entire week between the first and the second episode, the entire week between the second and the third episode, just nonstop. Couldn't stop talking about it. Like, I was doing so bad at work at this time, and, like, I was in a job where my boss was pissed at me. You did not want your boss to be pissed at you. I mean, you never do, but especially not in this job I was doing then. And it didn't matter. It's the only thing we could think about. And then, of course, in the middle of it, the Sign of 3 aired.
And I remember watching it, and, like, the kind of first moment when he's, like sadly staring at John's chair, and then he walks into his bedroom and like gets the suit and he's like, into battle. I was just sitting there like, this is gonna be as gay as I dreamed. And as the episode wore on, it was even gayer than I dreamed. It was revealed that Johnlock was not fake at all, and that I didn't need to be disappointed in everybody. And yeah, and we were fucking sitting there watching it, and at that point, I had started to text bitches y'all know, like Grace eBooks and Mia, and basically, as soon as Sherlock left the wedding early, it felt real. It was like, oh my god, it was like that whole episode was indeed about them being in love. And it was like this huge shock, and like my entire dashboard was like, holy shit. The immediate fallout of the Sign of Three was like what I imagine it must be like to be on cocaine. Because I was like shaking, I did not sleep. I was actually taking a bartending class at the time, and they would play December 1963 on their playlist during the bartending class twice a day. And like just every time I'd fucking like shake and clap. I was like, holy shit.
So at this point, me and Fox were like, you know, in the course of our nonstop, endless Skype conversations for that second week, you know, we were just like, wait a minute. This is happening. It has to be happening. It's happening right here in front of our eyes, in between Antiques Roadshow episodes. And there just was not enough reason at that point for us to continue believing that this was impossible. Because we were smart people, we were experienced media watchers and critiquers and thinkers, and we knew what we were seeing. It was right there in front of us. So we just ultimately had to conclude that, in fact, this was the story that they were telling. We were right. They had to be telling this story. And therefore, they had to just be lying, which, frankly, was not a hard jump to make because, of course, if you're telling a story that people aren't going to be expecting, you're not going to tell everyone that that's the story you're telling before you do it. So we were just like, it's happening. So, because like I said, Mia is that person that you just, you want this to be happening for her so much. You just want to be able to be like, it is happening, Mia. So, of course, once we believed that it was, we had to loop her in right away. So, it was, like I said, it was that week after the Sign of Three aired. We were just like furiously Skyping, and this idea was taking shape. It was really coalescing in our minds.
Within the week, Natty Loud Subtext in Television posted a meta called Operation Johnlock is Go, which was kind of the first sort of like real comprehensive meta that put together some pieces of evidence for Johnlock being real from the beginning. And from there, people just went batshit.
And it was right around this same time that Fox came across one of Natty Loudest Subtext in Television's first metas that she wrote about this very same idea. You know, obviously Natty is brilliant and her meta is extremely complex and deep, but a lot of the stuff was the very same stuff that Fox and I were seeing in this show that we were just sort of unable to square with the idea that this was not a romance, that this wasn't the story that they were telling, because it was, you know, it was, like I said, it was happening right there in front of our eyes. So at that point, you know, we were coming up with this belief that this was what was going on. Natty was writing this incredible meta that was backing that belief up. You know, we were sort of like the loud people who were memeing everywhere and of course, had to name this idea something jokey and easy to say, to sort of refer to it between among ourselves. And I think at some point during that week, I just started calling it the Johnlock conspiracy. And then eventually Fox coined the famous acronym TJLC. And TJLC was born. So it really was, the name TJLC really was a joint effort between myself and Fox.
We were just like waiting for his last vow. Not everybody was on board with the Johnlock conspiracy at that point, but the acronym, which is why I'm even talking about it, is what it is. That happened like a few hours after we were like just going over it, and we were like, how could it possibly be so gay? I just don't really see an interpretation that like allows this to be romantic, you know? And then at that point we started talking about like, what if it like is romantic? And it's like, well, if it was romantic, they'd kind of have to have been planning that all along and lying about it. And as we were like, oh shit, they're lying about it. And we were just like going back and forth on Skype, and I just made this stupid joke. It was like the Johnlock conspiracy, TJLC, which is, well, it is, I don't really feel like an authority on the Johnlock conspiracy.
And, of course, we're talking on Skype, we're talking on Tumblr. We start using the acronym on Tumblr in our discussions about this idea. And, of course, immediately, because as we know, anything involving me, no matter what, has to be dramatic and wanky. People were like pissed immediately. They were like, oh, what's this secret exclusive club you're creating? We were like, we're just making a space for ourselves in fandom, creating a space in fandom where people who had this perspective, who shared our perspective on the show, who shared the frustration born of that sort of conflict between what we were watching on TV and what we were all sort of led to believe had to be the truth about what was happening. And, to share art, to share writing, to share meta, to share all of that coming from that perspective that we felt had to be the right one, and that we really didn't feel was otherwise represented in fandom.
So for the week leading up to his last vow, there was this like total genuine expectation within like a very small sect of fandom that holy shit, they could go canon Johnlock here. Don't know how they're going to get rid of Mary, but they plausibly could. And it was definitely like almost certain, like it was like you could taste it on the tarmac scene when you were watching it for the first time. It was like he's gonna tell me lies, like he's gonna do it, which everyone has felt while watching it, but it was just like fucking like cocaine. It was like really amazing. What a rush. And with that moment in his last vow, it really felt like, oh my, like, kind of a confirmation. I know that people kind of held off on feeling like it was confirmed till after the Abominable Bride, which is another can of worms. But, kind of suddenly, like, after this, like, revelation that, like, oh my god, like, Sherlock really was in love with John at the wedding, it's like, it's finally kind of, we know now. But it had to stay a conspiracy because everyone thinks it's bullshit, as we well know and have experienced.
There was some point at which, we were posting about TJLC, Natty was sort of starting to expand her meta, and, of course, eventually, inevitably, we came together, and the rest is history,
After his last vow, fandom kind of became a TJLC paradise because everyone's happy and everyone's into like it being gay for real, and like people are. It's like it's not that weird kind of like shame, sort of gay sex is gross situation, which was not fun. I think that's all she wrote, you guys. So, love talking to fellow Johnlock conspirators. Keep the secret. And, fingers crossed it happens in S4. Bye.
First of all, we miss you, Natty. Thank you so much for everything you've done for us. We love you. Second of all, here we are, just a few months away from Canon Johnlock. And really what I want to say is thank you to you guys. Thank you for being part of creating a place in the fandom that was a place for us. That was looking at the show from a perspective that we felt, first of all, was not represented in fandom, but second of all, was inevitably the right one. And not just the right one. The most wonderful thing about it was that it was the right one, and it was the one you wanted to be true. So thank you guys. It's been an amazing journey. It's only going to get better from here. I will see everybody in January. Get ready.
That was so great. Thank you so much to both of you. I really appreciate it. So here are the events from my perspective. So I've said this before, I'm not sure I have in videos, but I started watching Sherlock explicitly for Johnlock. Initially, I was on Tumblr for the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which if you've seen them, you'll definitely recognize the impact that series had on my style and format for these videos. But that series ended pretty early on in the year, so I was looking for something new to enjoy. I saw people talking about Sherlock on my dash a lot. But when I was introduced to Sherlock, I was introduced to the concept of Johnlock at the same time, because a lot of the posts were about Johnlock. And I'll be honest, seeing those gifs and those pictures, I saw it kind of immediately. But I don't know, I was hesitant. I thought maybe it was just out of context, maybe, you know, they were making more out of something than was really there. Eventually there was a tipping point for me. I had heard about the show and I was putting off watching it. I figured I would at some point, but then one day I saw this gift set, and I'm pretty sure it was of the eye contact during the shoe deduction in the Great Game. I remember seeing this and I'm like, okay, I can't see how this can just be a snapshot because it's going on for a very long time. I have to watch the show and see, like, this looks like it's there and I have to watch it to see. And you know, I was prepared watching it to instantly be like, oh no, they were making something out of nothing and I'll just enjoy the crime show because, you know, all of my favorite shows before then were like Monk and Psych and Pushing Daisies. Oh, the last one is a lot more like Sherlock than the other two at this point. So going into the show, I already wasn't super optimistic. When I watched it, the second John and Sherlock were in a room together, I felt it. I marathoned the first two series, which at the time were all that were available, in 24 hours. And I was just hooked. The crimes were clever, the imagery was beautiful, the score was breathtaking, everything was put together so well. But what kept drawing me in, what kept me going and on the edge of my seat and so invested in the show was the relationship between Sherlock and John. I really felt it. I felt the excitement of the meeting, the pain in a scandal in Belgravia, the tragedy of the Reichenbach fall. I felt it and saw it, and I was sure that was where it was going. Until I went back online and started to dig into the fandom, and immediately I saw that the wedding episode was already being filmed. So everything I saw was fake. It was put there to catch people's attention like it did mine, or as a joke, or unintentionally. Because if they were planning an episode where John got married to a woman, there was no way what I saw was real. And I didn't understand a lot about LGBT representation back then. I still thought I was straight back then, which is very funny now. So I wasn't angry about it. I was sad, I was disappointed. I wished more than anything the show would do it because it seemed like it had the perfect setup for it and would be beautiful. And this was actually my first Holmes adaptation too. I think I had seen the first Robert Downey Jr. movie once, and like I was aware of Holmes and Elementary, My Dear Watson, and the silly hat and the pipe. Like I was aware of it in the same way, you know, like it's a very cultural thing, it's all around. I had heard of Holmes before, but I wasn't aware of the impact that would have specifically on these characters or the history of the character. Like I wasn't aware of any of that. I was just personally seeing the show. I thought it would be a beautiful thing if they had done it, but knowing that a heterosexual marriage was upcoming, I couldn't see how that could be the case. And I was preparing myself for that. I remember watching The Empty Hearse, and those moments I saw kept happening. Especially the bonfire scene, especially the doctor's clean-shaven thing, and especially that scene at the bottom of the stairs. Like, I still saw them and I felt them, but the wedding was 5 days away, I didn't have any more hope that it was going anywhere. I remember the few days before The Sign of Three aired, I kept reading post-wedding fics, where either, you know, it was still gay after the wedding, or they figured things out after the wedding. I think Fox's very angsty one was among the ones I was reading just to prepare myself. And I thought, you know, even if the show isn't doing this, I can still experience this story this way, and even if I like the show less because it isn't doing this, it will be okay. I will be okay. I was prepared to like the show, again, like I was when I first went into it, for the crimes, for all those other things I appreciated, and just kind of let the way I enjoyed the relationship go. The episode had been advertised as a love letter to John Watson, so I wasn't really sure what I was expecting. You know, I was thinking we would see a beautiful ceremony, see Mary talk about how good John was, maybe see John in action doing some cool things. Whatever else I expected to happen, I was absolutely sure that they would take this opportunity to once and for all confirm that it was only ever just a friendship. I was expecting The Sign of Three to be the end, where they destroyed that reading through a straight marriage, because I thought that was the intent with writing the episode. So that was my, and a lot of people's, expectation going in. That it would be this big heterosexual love affair fest, and that it would be the end of Johnlock. And then it came out, and I remember watching it that first time, and in that scene in the beginning where Mrs. Hudson is talking about how sad her friend was, and there's just that beat of Sherlock staring at John's empty chair, and I was like, is this, like, and I was just, because it was already subverting my expectations, because I thought it was going to, again, I was expecting to unambiguously just kill it, and it kept going, and it kept getting more obvious. They introduced an ex-boyfriend character for John. They had the stag night in there, and when they said it was a love letter to John Watson, they meant it was a love letter from Sherlock about how much he loves John, about how it's always John Watson, he keeps him right. In the episode, I expected to kill the alternative reading. The reading I saw is like edgy and subversive. It's what the show was doing. Instead of killing it, they turned it up 100 notches. And then Sherlock leaves the wedding early, heartbroken and sad, and I remember sitting there, like, just my mind was blown, because I had been expecting a completely different episode. And you know, in my wildest dreams, I had hoped maybe they would leave the door open for Sherlock pining, maybe, or I don't know, something uncomfortable with, I don't know, just I had hoped for something like some small loophole that I could still hold on to. They didn't make that a small loophole. That was the point of the episode. It was screaming at you that they skipped the wedding. Like, it was all about John and Sherlock's love for each other and how unspoken it was, and how this wedding wasn't a good thing. It was the opposite of the episode I expected, and it was just beautiful and amazing, and I felt this happiness because I'd always thought the story would be wonderful and beautiful if they had been willing to tell it as a love story. And for the first time, because the wedding had been looming over me for so long as my reason for not believing that that's where it was going, like, when the wedding, instead of killing it, turned up the subtext and made it more obvious than ever, I believed. And so I went on Tumblr, and I saw a similar thing happening, and it was just, I remember that day so vividly. Everyone was so excited, everyone was like, is this happening? Is this real? And over that next week, you know, again, I wasn't super involved in the fandom. I think I had about 80 followers at the time. I was very much a lurker. I wanted it, and I was like, I had this huge surge of hope. For the first time since that first marathon, I had a surge of hope for it. In that week, you know, TJLC became a thing, and I read Loudest Subtext on Television's meta, Trust in Gatiss, Operation Johnlock is Go, which, hey, surprise, surprise, is in that meta drive folder. Like, I really recommend reading it. It came out before his last vow, even, and it was just, all of these things were making me more sure. And then his last vow came out, and rather than, again, negating it, which it could have done, it kept it going. You know, John was miserable in his marriage. He was jealous of Janine. Mary shoots Sherlock. Sherlock pulls himself to life for John, and then there's that moment on the tarmac, and just, if you were there for that week, you felt that silence in between. You know, there's something I always wanted to say and never have. Like, you felt it. You knew what Sherlock was going to say. You felt so sure that it was going to be the love confession, because that would, like, crown off everything that was happening, and he decided not to do that, but you'll see in a future episode that itself is a romantic trope. But it was amazing, and it changed everything. And because I suddenly had this hope that those feelings I saw and I related to and I felt so strongly about, you know, were real, were happening, it was a real thing, and I wasn't gross or weird for being invested in it. I started to be more open to my reading of it and to the feelings that were causing me to be so invested in it, and I realized a lot of things about myself. So it was this huge moment, and it kind of, to me, all happened because of the sign of 3. And I know, you know, it's been more of a process. You know, everyone got more sure, I feel like, after The Abominable Bride. Mostly after we totally predicted it, and after a few scenes in it, which I will be talking about when we get there. But to me, the sign of 3 is really the one that started it all. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. It was a little bit more casual, but I felt that fit the subject matter. I need to give a huge thank you again to both Fox and Grace for agreeing to be in this video and for their help and just volunteering their time and their effort and appearing. It was great. It was, you know, a lot better because I could have both of them on. So thank you, you both. You're great and I love you. While we're being casual, there's been a little bit of reordering in some of the videos. So the last one said that after this is the sign of 3. That's not right. Next you're getting one on canon, and the end of that is going to be completely wrong as far as order goes because that was going to go 2 videos ago. It's been restructured a little bit, but it's gonna be fine. Just hang in there. It will all be in order again soon. I have a few videos on romance and undeniability coming up to fit this theme of the sign of 3, so I hope you're all looking forward to those. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and get ready to believe.
I think that's enough.
Oh, Jane. Oh, Jane. Oh, here. Let's say hi to everyone. Let's say hi. This is the kitty.
This is the most important part of the Johnlock conspiracy.
I mean, at the end of the day, the sign of 3 is an episode that brought us all together for more #love. Ah! That's not going good.